Joining me right now is XFC promoter, the guy that runs the show, Matt Walton. How you doing?
Yeah, really good, buddy. Yourself? How are you?
Good, good. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the move of the week. Before we get into all the promotional stuff, move of the week. Do you train a
Yeah.
lot?
Unfortunately, running a show means not a lot of time for spare time, sort of thing. So I wish I had time to jump on the mats and put the gloves on every now and then. But yeah, unfortunately, I probably get a chance to maybe train once every 2 or 3 weeks at the moment, which absolutely kills me. But yeah, I definitely take my training gear in the car with me. So if one of the coaches invites me onto the mats, I'll definitely jump on and have some fun.
Of course, you're running the show, but other than that, what are you doing as like your job?
Yeah, sure. So I work in the prison system in Brisbane. So I work in some of the prisons here. So as an officer, the best thing about that job is that they're 12-hour shifts. So I do 2 or 3 shifts a week, and it still allows me 4 or 5 days a week to run XFC full time. So more or less, the prisons is more just for a bit of fun. I've always been intrigued by that sort of work. Maybe one day I'd like to join the police force. So I think I'll do XFC for a good 5-10 years, and then the part time in the prisons will give me that kind of that stepping stone to jump into that line of work.
I know that Damien Brown is also works in the prison system. Do you work with him?
No, but Damien helped me get through the process though. So yeah, he's working at a completely different prison. So he works at Woodford. That's where all the tough guys go, and all the UFC fighters as officers. I'm off at Wacol. So yeah, Damien Brown definitely helped me with the answers and the interview process. So I owe a lot to Damien for the job.
Awesome. That's the MMA world coming together, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Some people think I'm doing it to recruit some fighters, but yeah, it's definitely a myth. All the MMA fighters I've come across are very respectful and obedient, so they're nice.
Has anybody, while you've been working, come up to you and recognized you and said, "Hey, man, I got some skills. Give me a shot."
No, I'm pretty lucky at the moment. I'm working in the female prison at the moment, so yeah, at the moment, no, there's not that many people have recognised me. A couple of the other officers have been to some shows, so they knew me from there. But yeah, no, I keep it pretty quiet in terms of what I do on the outside, just to avoid that conflict of interest. But no fight opportunities just yet.
Awesome. Now the Australian MMA scene has exploded in the past few years. You are part of it. You are a big part of it. Your promotion is a big part of it. Can you explain how this growth has been happening?
Yeah, definitely. It probably, in terms of other promotions, helping with the expansion has probably only happened in the last year or two. But those shows have been working towards that promotion. But when we bought the show off Justin, our first show was XFC 27. So Justin had owned it for the 26 shows before that, and the guy had done a lot for the MMA scene. Started the show in 2003. It's the longest running show in Australia. So that was a good, 15 years worth of gradual expansion. So we've now got some massive shows like Hex in Melbourne, Urban Fight Night in Sydney, and Diamond back in Adelaide that are doing some incredible things. And the thing I love about that is that we're constantly talking. Just before we jumped on this interview, I was speaking to those guys about when are they doing their shows, when we're doing ours, and we're pooling some fighters together as well. So I think the expansion in the last year has really kicked off because a good core group of shows that, put fighters first have really started to band together, and they're happy to see everyone successful, not just themselves when the money's in their own pocket. So I guess that's what I put the expansion down to is a whole bunch of promoters happy to work together and see the actual sport progress. That's the main thing.
I think that is the key factor, right, to grow a sport is having the main guys, the promoters, right, come together, work together, finding out a way to kind of find a common ground and, elevate the sport or anything that they're doing. Because when I look at other countries, because I've been to other countries where there's like promotions that are really trying to destroy each other, basically.
Yeah.
But in Australia, I've talked to you, I'm talking to you right now, and I know a couple of the other promoters, and you see that this is happening in Australia where champions are going to other promotions and fighting the other champions, and it's more for the fighters basically, not just for yourself, right? So
Yeah,
I
100%.
respect that what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And we've got quite a few exclusive contracts for some of our fighters. The new exclusive contracts are actually bringing out actually include some of these other promotions. So basically letting them know that, you know, we want to invest in you in Brisbane and Queensland. But if some of our show dates don't work in line with you, then let us know, because we've got these other shows in Melbourne and Perth, and we're doing shows in New Zealand now that will take you. So we're happy to continue your momentum in Queensland and Brisbane. If you want to put a couple more fights in the year that we can't accommodate, then let us know and we can put you on these other world-class shows as well. So it definitely helps when I get phone calls from other promoters saying, hey, look, I've got this name for you. Can you jump him on the card? You know, so when they're doing half my job for me, it definitely makes it a lot more enjoyable.
You just mentioned New Zealand, right? It's kind of like a untapped territory for a promotion. Have you, can you explain like how far you have gotten with doing a show there?
Yeah, definitely. So we teamed up with a great show over there, which was called Hammerhead Promotions. You know, Matt Toe and the group over there run a really solid, not only gym, but they run a fantastic promotion that's been running a really long time as well. When we dealt with Matt Toe, he brought a couple of his fighters over. For example, Brogan Anderson fought on our first ever show when we did it at XFC 27 under our ownership. And we loved the way, just the history that he had in the sport as well. So when we knew that we wanted to go over to New Zealand, we knew the easiest way was to probably team up with an existing show over there. And there were a couple of good shows, you know, Hammerhead Promotions, Shuriken do a really good show as well. We've got a couple of our champs that are Shuriken champs as well. But we really clicked with Matt Toa. So our last show was last year in December 2nd. We finally did a show in New Zealand with Hammerhead Promotions. And our next show is in about 4 weeks time at the end of April as well. So we're going back over to New Zealand soon. And then we'll do a third show in New Zealand at the end of the year.
How are the turnouts for the shows in New Zealand?
It's completely different demographic. You know, in Australia, we've had a great turnout with table sales for this show. You know, we've sold 18, which is the most we can fit into our current venue. And then we'll probably sell about 1,000 tickets in this current venue. New Zealand's completely different. Without saying they've got a drinking problem, they love the social side of the drinking. So for our first show, they sold 30 tables, which is absolutely monstrous, you know, and then a couple of hundred seats as well. New Zealand can be a bit funny though, where if it's raining or if something happens. Our first show, we kind of timed it a little bit rough, where there was something about it was called a crate day, where the government just randomly chooses a day where they know it's going to be great weather. They call it crate day, and everyone goes and buys a crate of beers and sits down all day in the sun and just drinks with their friends. Kind of like how Australia has their, you know, their Triple J Hottest 100, you know, a full day just for drinking and sitting around with their mates. Unfortunately, the council called that on the day that our XFC event was on. But like I said, we still sold 30 tables, which is, you know, 300 people sitting around drinking for a solid session and watching the fights. And there was still a good 500 people that bought tickets to the show as well. So whereas once again, Australia is more, you know, you might sell 15 to 20 tables, but then you'll sell 1,000 tickets. So at the end of the day, it was a great crowd, and we were stoked for that turnout for our first show there.
Awesome. Your next show, XFC 34, that's the one to talk about. It's going to be your first Friday night fights. What is this concept of the Friday night fights?
Yeah, so it came down to a couple of things. So at the moment, you know, we wanted to make sure that, you know, when picked the date was right and it wasn't competing with anybody. Unfortunately, the venue we had, we didn't realise was double booked. So we were almost kind of forced our hand to either change the date to a Saturday that worked or to run with a Friday night. And once again, speaking to Trent and our friends at Hex, you know, they told us that Friday nights were rather successful for them. And once again, you know, Hex is doing another show tonight on a Friday night. It got us thinking that, you know, when we do ask people to come for a fight night on Saturday, we are almost sabotaging their entire weekend. You know, it's a good couple of hours to get ready. It's a good 4 or 5 hours for the show, then another hour to get home. We're basically writing off their Saturday. And if they really enjoy themselves, then they're probably feeling a little sorry the next day as well on a Sunday. And probably some of the fighters as well. You know, they're probably recovering on that day, and they might possibly have to go to work on Monday. So we decided, you know, instead of actually, once again, not ruining someone's weekend, but taking their entire weekend away from them, what if we just did a show on a Friday night which then allowed the families to spend their times with their loved ones and their kids and all that sort of stuff on the Saturday, Sunday as well. So worst case scenario, we've still got a great venue and a great location, and we're allowing those families to enjoy the rest of their weekend after they come watch the fights after work on a Friday.
The headliner was supposed to be a lightweight title bout between Isaac Hardman and BJ Bland, right? Isaac was injured. He hurt his knee. He tried to, I guess, push through it, but it didn't work out for him, so he had to be pulled. How does that affect this card, in your words?
Yeah, so if we're at a bigger venue, it would probably hurt because Isaac's has such a massive following. As it stands at the moment, we've pretty much sold out of the venue as it is at the moment. So to have Isaac on the card was literally just the cherry on top. And to have someone like BJ Bland that everyone's been talking about for quite a long time, to have him on the show as well was really exciting. So in terms of ticket sales, we're already packed at the moment. So I guess this was more just me looking at it as myself as a fight fan. I want to watch Isaac whenever I get the opportunity. And like I said, there's a whole bunch of UFC fighters that are talking about BJ Bland at the moment that I really wanted to see him fight as well. So in terms of the card, that's what we really miss out on is, as fight fans, we miss out on that show. But, Isaac's young. He'll be back in a couple of months' time. So we can definitely put that fight together possibly in July.
You have 5 title fights here, amateur, pro. Yeah. Are you more of a guy that wants to put on shows where it's like a stacked card rather than having a bunch of shows that are spread out?
Yeah, I think, especially when you look at some of the local shows here at the moment, some shows really do like to invest some money, whereas others seem to be wanting to protect that bottom line. One thing I love about our show is if you look at all the 15 fights on the card, every name that's on the show. So unfortunately, if you do have a mistake where someone like Isaac Hardman has to pull out, the 10 or 11 or 12 fights underneath are possibly title, main card worthy as well. And that's something we've always prided ourselves on an XFC card, is that, once again, without the cliched word, but it's, they're all killers and no fillers. So you got Brogan Anderson and Jaden Anoud stepping up to the main event. These guys are incredible beasts. You know what I mean? So they would be on the main card of any other show in Australia if they'd had that fight as well. So we're definitely not missing out on anything with the card, with having to push Isaac and BJ's fight to another show. And outside of that, we're yes men. We want to provide fighters with the best opportunity. So if Brogan Anderson reaches out to us and says, I want to fight on the card, then we do everything that we can. The girls that are fighting, Kayla Banney and Brooke Kenrick, they came to us with that fight. They said, it's been a long time coming. We want to put this fight together. Let's put it on XFC. So we did that fight. So basically every fight that we've got on the show, half of them are actually brought to us. And we want to give them that best opportunity. And we think that's on XFC. So we're basically yes men. And we'll say, yep, we'll do that fight. And we'll give you a good platform to fight on.
Yeah, you mentioned the Kayla Banney versus Brooke Kenrick fight, the atomweight title. Can you tell us more about these fighters? If someone like me that doesn't know much about them, can you give us some info?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess starting with Brooke, she comes from a really, really strong gym, one of the top gyms in the country, one of the most aggressive coaches as well in Joel Zepasvari. And what I mean by aggressive is that if you go to their gym, they're all about attacking, so they always want to finish fights. They always want to put on exciting fights, and they've bred some really good XFC champions in the past because of that mentality. So the thing I love about having Brooke on this card is that she's the only one from Combat Lab on our show for this card. So we've seen her put on some impressive performances before, but never when she's been the focus from the gym. She's always been having to juggle with other fighters that are fighting at the same time. Whereas Joel, Nicole, Zepasvari is all one of our former champions. Once again, they're giving her all of their time. So I really do think we're going to see the best Brooke Kenrick around. She's actually had some competitions with Kayla Banney in the past in terms of jiu-jitsu as well. So, and I think Kayla Banney has been successful in those attempts. So that's what's really exciting about this fight. In terms of the amount of talent at that weight class is pretty minimal because obviously, there's not many 48-kilo fighters running around the country at the moment. So this fight was always going to happen. Once again, we're stoked that they chose to do it on XFC. And Kayla Banney, once again, in terms of pedigree and working with XFC champions, Daniel Lima is her head coach. And Daniel Lima won the XFC bantamweight belt in 2003 when the show first started. So in terms of that full circle, again, where we've got coaches that are now, so fighters that are now coaches, we're really, really pumped to see that full circle come around again.
It's always great when fighters have a history, even if it's in another combat sport. How do you see this playing out? Do you see like a grinding out 5-round war, or do you see somebody finishing somebody else?
I think there will be a finish. Both of these girls are so dynamic. I'm actually really, really excited for this fight. The thing I love about it is they've both got stamina, so we're not going to see them fatigue. They can both strike, so there's definitely a chance of a TKO. They've both got great submission games. I don't know. I have a feeling there's something going to be exotic about it. There's going to be a really fancy finish. We've definitely seen that from the Combat Lab team, that they're happy to throw out, De La Rivas and reverse submissions and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, my pick is that there's probably going to be a submission or a TKO, and it's going to be something that we might not have seen before, something completely random.
Well, you got me sold. I'm gonna watch this fight now. Now
they're such good athletes. Really exciting.
Yeah, since the main event was canceled, now you got a new main event. You got Brogan Anderson fighting Jaden Enod for the middleweight title. It's vacant.
Yeah.
How did that fight come together?
Yeah, so I guess when it comes to picking a title fight, you kind of start with the guy that's the main challenger. And that was Brogan Anderson. Brogan Anderson was on a massive run. He lost his title fight to Matt Vale, and pretty much everyone's losing to Matt Vale at the moment. So the difference with Brogan Anderson is Brogan Anderson in New Zealand is actually the 77-kilo champ, the welterweight champ, but he's also the light heavyweight champion as well. So the guy is massive. Like when he turns up, I don't know how he makes 77 kilos. But to see the guy was also fighting at, 93 kilos and winning, when he fought on XFC in New Zealand as the main event, he fought at 84 kilos. He had a really strong showing. It was an unfortunate incident that where his opponent broke his leg in that match. But he came back to us and said, look, he wants to have a crack at that 84-kilo title. Now, Jaden Enod he's only had 2 or 3 pro fights in MMA, but the guy's had about 20 kickboxing fights and Muay Thai fights. If I could give you any name in terms of a kid that's coming up through the ranks that's going to be the next big thing, it's Jaden Enod. This guy is an absolute weapon. He was an XFC amateur champion. Once again, he went away to do some stand-up, but didn't neglect his ground game. Once again, I can't pick the winner of that fight. And if you look at the poster, it looks like a computer game cover. You know what I mean? These guys are ripped. And they just really looked the part. So once again, I'm really excited as that for our main event.
Yeah, you got a lot of fights, a lot of good matchups. What is one other fight that kind of stands out or is the most intriguing, do you think, out of, other than the title fights?
Yeah, I think so. Probably 2. The first quick one would be Matt Seaton versus Paul Loga. Again, Matt Seaton's had 20 or 30 stand-up fights. Paul Loga's, once again, previous XFC amateur champion, but dabbles in Muay Thai and kickboxing as well, and is coming off a huge knockout win where I think the guy was knocked out for 5 minutes or 20 minutes. I believe it might have even been 20 minutes that he was knocked out for. So he's coming off a huge win. So this is the sort of guy that is prepared to trade and bang. He took out our fight of the night on our last show. So I'm really excited to see how that fight pans out. And another fight that I'm really keen to see is Tom Nolan again. This 18-year-old kid. He's 5 or 6 or 7-0 now if you include his junior fights as well. Once again, he came up against a really tough competitor on his last fight and demolished him. He's coming up against another really aggressive fighter, but Brandon Stowles is going to have his head switched on a little bit more than Tom's previous opponent. So I'm really excited to see Tom go up against, once again, a really aggressive fighter. But this time his opponent might have his head in the game a little bit more. I could talk about every fight, having Darren Haben back on the card again. There's so many things I'm excited about this show where I think I actually might sit down and watch this one. because normally I'm off around the back, running around, watching, looking after the fighters and making sure they're ready and the production, that sort of thing. This one, I might actually grab a seat and watch the whole show cage side.
Yeah, I agree with you. Tom Nolan looks like a very interesting prospect coming up. He's young and he's fearless. So, that combination is dangerous.
Yeah, and he did those first 6 or 7 fights when he was training with Joseph Perry up in Toowoomba, who's a phenomenal coach. And I sound like a broken record where I keep talking about former XFC champions, but, Joseph Perry's produced a whole stack of them. And now Tom Nolan's moved down to the Gold Coast where he's training with Joseph's brother, Vincent Perry. And Vincent Perry is basically the original jiu-jitsu guy of Queensland. Trains awesome weapons like, Tim Moore and Reese McLaren. So to see Tom Nolan now training with those guys, I'm really excited to see how far his game's come. And in terms of a business person, Tom Nolan's really stepped up for this show. We had to move the date. Tom Nolan's birthday plans fell on the original date. He moved them. We then had to move the date again, and we didn't hear a single peep out of him. He moved his plans. He's moved mountains to make sure he fights and to showcase what he's got. And I think that shows what a true fighter's about. So we apologise to Tom's family for having to move the date, but I really think Tom's going to reward you with his performance.
Yeah, XFC 34 at Mansfield Tavern. It's going to be a crazy card coming up. I'm excited to watch it. I'm pretty sure you're excited because you just said earlier that you might actually sit down and watch these fights. It was good talking to you, and I would like to have you again before XFC 35 in a couple weeks. We could talk about the fights and maybe even kind of recap what happened at XFC 34.
Yeah, mate, would love to. I love what you're doing for the Australian MMA scene as well. So, big props for everything you're doing for us and for all the other shows out there.
All right, thank you, man, for your time.
Too easy, buddy. We'll speak soon.